In recent months, the U.S. military has done what experts call the largest buildup of forces in the region in the past 5 years. This is not just about a show of force. For the first time since 2020, the Pentagon is seriously preparing for a scenario that until recently seemed hypothetical, a large-scale operation against Iran. But how exactly is the U.S. preparing for this? Why have elite paratroopers been ordered to stay in their barracks? And why have fifth-generation fighter jets been deployed to Israeli air bases? Let's break down the 3 levels of preparation: sea, air, and land. The first and most visible step has been the buildup of the naval force. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group did not arrive alone in the U.S. Central Command's area of responsibility. With it came guided missile destroyers, each carrying up to 90 Tomahawk cruise missiles. The total number of American troops in the region now reaches 50,000 service members. But why is the aircraft carrier the centerpiece of this preparation? Because the Lincoln serves as a floating command center. In the event of conflict, the first phase of the war would be coordinated from here. A massive missile strike on Iranian air defense systems, missile silos, and command posts of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The waters of the Strait of Hormuz are the narrowest choke point, where tankers sail in tight formation. Here, the aircraft carrier is not just a ship, it is a deterrent and, at the same time, a trigger. The second level is aviation. Here, something happened that the Pentagon did not publicize, but which became known to journalists. 12 fifth-generation F-22 Raptor fighter jets were deployed to Israel's Nevatim Air Base. Why is this significant? The F-22 is the only aircraft in the U.S. arsenal capable of operating in the dense Iranian air defense environment at extremely low altitudes while remaining undetected by radar. At the same time, the military conducted exercises on rapid dispersal tactics. This means that whereas American aircraft used to be based at 2 or 3 giant air bases in Qatar or Bahrain, the military is now rehearsing a scenario where squadrons are dispersed across dozens of small, improvised airstrips. The goal is to prevent Iranian ballistic missiles from destroying the entire Air Force in a single strike. In essence, the U.S. Air Force is preparing for a war of attrition, where every runway becomes a target. And this brings us to the most dangerous and most important element. Many assume that a war with Iran would be fought exclusively from the air or with missiles. But U.S. preparations suggest otherwise. The most telling signal came from the 82nd Airborne Division, stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. This is the elite of the U.S. Army, the so-called Immediate Response Force. On alert, they must be ready to deploy anywhere in the world within 18 hours. Normally, this division is constantly involved in exercises, but a few weeks ago, division headquarters received orders to remain on base. All major exercises were canceled. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Pentagon is considering deploying about 3,000 paratroopers from this division to the Middle East. But paratroopers are only the tip of the iceberg. Additionally, 3 ships carrying 2,200 Marines were sent to the region. In recent years, the U.S. Marine Corps has been restructuring for so-called expeditionary warfare, small mobile units capable of landing on islands or seizing port infrastructure. Why is this relevant against Iran? To counter Iranian fast attack boats, which the Revolutionary Guard uses to mine the Strait of Hormuz. Officially, officials describe this as strengthening deterrence. But former commander of U.S. Central Command, General Kenneth McKenzie, noted in an interview that Iran today possesses the most powerful arsenal of ballistic missiles in the Middle East. This means any escalation will be swift. The Pentagon's main concern is not just Iran's nuclear program, but also its ability to respond asymmetrically. Current U.S. exercises are built around 3 pillars: base defense, practicing the interception of kamikaze drone swarms, countering naval mines, mine countermeasure exercises in the Persian Gulf, sustaining logistics, how to move ammunition if major ports come under attack. So we see 3 levels of preparation: a powerful carrier strike group at sea, the dispersal of 5th-generation aircraft to forward bases, and, most importantly, the readiness of elite ground units, including the 82nd Airborne Division and the Marine Corps. The question is whether this is simply preparation for the worst-case scenario or the prelude to an actual conflict. History shows that when the Pentagon begins moving the immediate response force and cancels their exercises, it means the time for preparation is running out. The U.S. is ready to fight Iran not only from the air, it is preparing for a complex, multi-layered operation involving all branches of the military. How long this pause will last is a political question, but the military machine is already in motion. But what exactly would these ground forces do? According to recent reports from the New York Times and Reuters, the Pentagon is now actively considering a specific objective: the seizure of Karg Island. Karg Island is Iran's main oil export hub, handling approximately 90% of the country's oil exports. It lies in the northern Persian Gulf, and controlling it would effectively choke Iran's ability to fund the war. U.S. warplanes have already bombed more than 90 military targets on the island, damaging its airfield. So how would this operation unfold? The current plan being weighed involves a two-phase approach. First, about 2,500 Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, already en route to the region, would assault the island. Their combat engineers would rapidly repair the damaged airfield. Once the runway is operational, C-130 cargo planes would begin flowing in supplies and reinforcements. Then the 82nd Airborne paratroopers would arrive to augment the Marines, providing the staying power that amphibious forces alone lack. The upside of using paratroopers is they can arrive overnight, literally within 18 hours of an order. The downside? They don't bring heavy armored vehicles. If Iranian forces counterattack, the first wave would be vulnerable. But here's what makes this conflict fundamentally different from Iraq or Afghanistan. Iran is not just going to sit back and absorb these blows. They have already proven they can strike back, and hard. On February 28, 2026, Iran launched a massive retaliatory barrage. Missiles struck the service center of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters. Huge plumes of black smoke rose over Manama as American military families huddled in shelters. Iranian officials announced they had targeted U.S. bases in Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia, as well as American ships of the 5th Fleet. Since the conflict began, the U.S. Central Command reports conducting over 9,000 strikes against Iran, damaging or sinking more than 140 Iranian naval vessels. But the cost has been significant. Iranian attacks have killed multiple U.S. service members, impaired at least 17 American sites, and damaged equipment worth millions of dollars. And this is exactly why the Pentagon is so focused on base defense. The Iranian arsenal includes not just ballistic missiles like the Khorramshahr with its Tucson warhead, but also hypersonic missiles, medium-range Fatah systems, and swarms of kamikaze drones. This is not a hypothetical threat. It has already been used. So where does this leave us? The military buildup is undeniable, but analysts are increasingly asking whether Washington can actually achieve its objectives. The national interest recently described the U.S. military presence in the region as a strategic liability, and there are growing signs of divergence between the United States and Israel. When Israel struck an Iranian offshore natural gas field last week, President Trump publicly stated the U.S. knew nothing about this particular attack. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu later confirmed they had domestically, the political calculus is shifting. Oil prices have climbed above $100 a barrel, with some benchmarks approaching $120. A CNN poll showed 59% of Americans disapprove of the war. With midterm elections approaching in November, this matters. The international community is also pushing back. China's top diplomat called for peace talks, saying, "Talking is always better than fighting." Qatar has ruled out mediation. Pakistan has offered to host negotiations. Even U.S. allies in Europe are skeptical. So the question is no longer just about military capability, it's about political endurance. As one analyst put it, the United States is now operating within a narrow margin. Achieving clear, decisive objectives is becoming difficult. The most likely outcome may not be a definitive victory, but a managed containment, Periodic escalations, temporary understandings, but no comprehensive resolution. The military machine is in motion. The 82nd Airborne is preparing to move. The Marines are already at sea. But whether this becomes a full-scale ground war or something else entirely, that is now a political question.